Hey there, welcome back to Magic Land's Big Dark Room. On this episode, Daniel Savelt welcomes DJ and producer Mizeyesis. They sit down, they talk about her past, what she's been doing, and what she's got going on in the future. All right, let's get into the episode.
So I am extraordinarily lucky to be in the studio today with Mizeyesis. I feel extremely privileged, who has been DJing for as long as, well, I have, and actually I think you've been DJing longer. I started in 99. You started in
2002.
2002, but
yeah.
Didn't you have exposure to the to the music scene before the millennium?
Yes, yeah. Started going out probably like late 96 and then really started going to raves around 98.
Okay.
I just went to dance.
What was that like?
It was great.
What's the difference between the parties then and parties now?
Everything was very underground, but it was very big at the same time. Especially in New York City, there were a lot of clubs geared towards electronic music. You would hear a lot of trance, a lot of techno, a lot of house.
What kind of max cap?
It depends. It depended. There would be thousands of people dancing at that point in time, in the late 90s for sure. And I just went out to dance,
Sure.
98 was when I got exposed to drum and bass and jungle and really wanted to hear just that.
And you saw Dara for your first
Yes, the first time I went to a rave was late 98, mid 98, for Shine 2 at the Globe Theater in South Norwalk. It was the Moonshine Over America tour, and Dara played, AK-1200 played at the after party, but Kyoki and Dara were primarily the reasons why I went to that.
Right on. Did Kyoki perform, or did he
Yes,
smash
he
the
did.
Bex and leave?
Yes, he did. No, he performed. He did Caterpillar, which was his top, album at that time that came out on Moonshine. And Dara was, promoting his release as well. It was great. I had a good time. I ran into a lot of people I knew already from going out in Connecticut and New York, and I said, "This is it."
This is it.
Yeah,
This lit the fire.
Yeah, and just started going out a lot in New York. New York's drum and bass scene and their rave scene, and Connecticut's rave scene, and they didn't really have a drum and bass scene at that point in time. And then Springfield, Massachusetts, going up there to events up there, and just enjoying it.
Right on.
Yeah.
So you got your decks in 2002.
2002, after a breakup, I needed a hobby and figured, let me go buy a piece of vinyl. Plus, it came out of a bad relationship, so it was therapy.
Right. You were recovering from a dance injury.
Yes. So I had
but
all
you're
those
professionally
things.
trained.
Yes.
Actually, it was highly worth noting. Mm-hmm. What is your attraction to drum and bass and jungle as a professional dancer?
So a couple things. I noticed, it had a breakbeat in it, and when you study forms like tap or West African dance, there's always a break in the song, and you learn about that break and how to move in that break. And when I first heard drum and bass, it resonated deeply with me because of that. The way that I move as a dancer, it was very easy for me to really express myself that way. Also with house, I tend to dance very well in, so it was attractive to me to just fall naturally into going out into the scene and doing that.
Right on.
Yeah.
So 2002, you started buying vinyl, right? Started just like amassing all the vinyl you can, spinning it, that type of stuff. When did you start getting to be able to get your feet wet, as it were? When could you get out?
2004. So JJ Blades, who ran the Muni, offered me a gig, and Jeff Gill offered me a gig. Jeff Gill, I played New Year's opening for Beat Speed. And then I ended up starting a night in Hartford at the Warehouse. At first, that spot didn't work out. They didn't really like us that much. It was me, Torrential Oneself. We formed a collective called Threshold.
Yeah.
And then Sully's up the street, which was a very popular pub with a huge yard, like a tiki yard and stuff. They contacted us and said, why don't you guys come do it here? So we started Threshold Sounds, and every Thursday we would do our night. At first we started off, I remember, as a weekly, and then we went to a bi-weekly and then a monthly. And when we switched to the monthly events, we started to bring out bigger names from out of Connecticut. We brought out Tester, Archive, Strife, Jace Schickman, Lion Dub, Breakage was huge for us. Remark, we brought Remark on his first tour, or it might have been his second tour, but one of his tours in the United States, and that was a huge show for us. We moved on from Cellies, things happened, and we started doing nights, every one-offs at different parts of Connecticut. And one of the things that we did, we brought out Six Block from LA. We also brought out someone else. Brought out Outrage. We brought out a lot of people. Those are fun times. Also, Joe Nice, that was a big show as well. Those are fun times.
Right on.
Yeah.
So you ran that night till 2008,
Like
right?
2008, between 2008 2010, that was a transition for me to, the Threshold project sort of died out on its own. It was very difficult to maintain a cost-effective method of throwing drum and bass shows without losing funds to do so.
Sure.
So, at that point in time, I was already signed to a lot of other collectives in New England and New York City, and started to play in New York a lot, in Massachusetts a lot. Massachusetts, I formed with EC Army. In New York, it was DMBC, and I performed a lot at Bowery Poetry Club, Remote Lounge, The Hook,
All the Remote
Amazor,
Lounge.
Amazor
wow.
Ballroom.
I haven't heard that name in a minute.
All those clubs in New York at that point in time, Public Assembly, Studio B, and just making a name for myself. Eventually, that would lead me to play in DC, Baltimore, and Florida.
Well, during this time, what were you doing to maintain your... And this was like pre-Facebook. This was like MySpace.
MySpace era. So
like,
around those times, I definitely knew I needed to market myself. And I didn't really know where that idea came from. It just seemed like the most natural thing to do. Like I would link with different message boards and post mixes I was doing, or post the nights I was doing, and then would talk with other people, just sort of like networking. And I was really good at that from the beginning. And I've always naturally adapted to, social media as a whole in terms of networking and promoting myself. So it was never really a problem for me to do both, I would say. I definitely had mixes. I passed out CDs back in the day, and on the CD there would be my name, my number, or my email address, and so on and so forth, and people would find me through my MySpace or what have you. I also had like an Angel Fire website at that point in time, which was pre-WordPress.
Way back.
And then like learning from a lot of people in the UK, they had listservs.
Okay.
So at one point I did have a listserv. I kind of stopped that after a while because it did get really, really annoying. Plus with the integration of MySpace, you didn't really need it anymore.
Right.
So you were able to, utilize the function of social media to send people updates on what you were doing.
Right.
So that's what I did. And, there weren't many women at the time DJing drum and bass.
It's a boys club all the way back.
Yeah, and especially in the United States, and being a woman of color. So, I definitely gained notoriety. And I was spinning a specific sound of drum and bass as well at that point in time. Now a lot of different people...
That's 3 strikes against you.
I mean, actually it worked out really well in my favor, because a lot of producers, I networked with them and stuff like that, would learn about releases quickly. Sort of like my friends in house and my friends in techno, they were doing the same thing that I was doing, and we sort of learned from each other on things to do. And you sort of talked about it on message boards, so you would just sort of facilitate those ideologies and work through it, in terms of a marketing aspect and how to do it yourself and how to market yourself. You would take something of a macrocosm ideology and put it into a microcosm ideology. So, watching how businesses sort of market themselves, how do I take this idea for someone who's considered an entrepreneur as myself, and apply it in a manner that will help me, because this is a business at the end of the day. You are marketing a brand and a product. How do you basically get individuals on board with you?
Right.
And being yourself is definitely is one thing. I never shied away from talking about things and relating to other people. As a progression of DJing and DJ culture as a whole has progressed over the years, there are women, other people of color, or just people like you in general doing this, and you meet a lot of other individuals.
So 2008 brings us up to around the beginning of Fluid and Elements. Interestingly enough. So now you have two other fairly established nights that Elements obviously outlasted.
I played Fluid for the first time around 2005. Someone, I think it was Tina, he calls me and they needed a DJ to sort of fill in.
Yeah.
And I drove up, and the guy who ran the night at the time, this was before Clinton owned it, he said, why don't you come back next week and DJ? So I started coming up. He'd book me, Lady G, or me, Mega, or me, Maxwell, RIP, and a bunch of other people. So I got connected with a lot of the Western Mass drum and bass heads through that. Elements, I didn't play until 2012, actually. I first met Lenore a long time ago at the Asylum, I believe, or some rave, and then in the late 90s, that's when I first saw her.
Yeah.
And then I played Elements after, she became acquainted with who I was and what I was doing in 2012. But we played Beltec together. And we played Beltec in 2008 and then 2012. And 2012 was after I played Beltec, she booked me to play Elements. I was already playing in Boston a lot at that time because I was affiliated with EC Army. So, Mr. Lex, he ran that collective and would book me to come up and play. And I met a lot of the Boston drum and bass heads through that. Then I think it was around 2012 also, Jeff LeClaire and Jeff Gill started Afterlife in New Haven. So I would play a lot of those nights as well. For that, 2008, I also linked up with Volume. Actually, I linked up with Volume in 2005, but 2008, I linked up with them a little bit more and was playing a lot more nights in Rhode Island. So it's just like a conglomeration of a lot of places.
Again, rest in peace.
Therapy was one place. The living room, when it was still open, was definitely another place. Plastic, all kinds of places. There was a lot of times between 2006 through 2010, I was just on the road a lot, just playing all kinds of events and really making a name for myself. Around 2011, I joined with Satellite, so I started doing their stuff, coordinating their drum and bass stock, and then I linked with Jungle Train out of Amsterdam, which is a worldwide internet radio station, had a show on there for years. So that started my international connections through really strongly, even though I lived out in the UK, really more so linking with other producers and DJs through the radio show. And then also working with Hip Step, which was a part of Zulu Nation around 2010, and doing a lot of crossover shows with TC Islam and his crew, drum and bass and hip hop.
So, So when did your production start?
It started, I started to dabble a little bit with it in 2011, but I really didn't know what I was doing.
What were you on for a dog?
Ableton. I always started with Ableton, but I didn't really know what I was doing and just kind of sat there. I got booked to play Rupture in 2013, which is a night in London. Yeah. And after my set, Double O and I were talking, he's like, "You're really good, but you need to produce." And he was like, "I'm working on it," And when I went home, I drank a lot of yerba mate, and for 5 days didn't fall asleep off that yerba mate. Be careful with that drink.
Okay. Note to self.
And just watched a lot of YouTube tutorials and made my first tune, which was To Absolve. Okay. And just started making other tunes and putting them on my SoundCloud.
Clear it up for me. What's the negative effect of the yerba mate then?
You crash and you'll sleep for...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
So now your production, you're comfortable with your production?
Kind of. It took me a few years. I gained the attention of a few other artists like Screw out of Greece. And I worked with him on the Seja EP, which came out in 2015. And then I met Awake FM. He and I got booked at a show in upstate New York around 2016, and we started working on a release for Omni Music. And at that time, simultaneously, I was writing my own EP, Seven Systems. And though both of those came out in 2017, plus a bunch of other things, 2017, 2018. And pretty much almost every year I've put out something. I'm working on right now a tune for a label in Louisiana called Pinecone Moonshine and several other projects, and I have something that just is about to be released on Yeska Beats Unlimited on the 22nd called Warmth.
And that's this month, right?
Yes, and the tune is on a compilation called Rough Rugged.
Okay. Where can everybody pick this up?
Bandcamp. If you go to my Facebook, I definitely have put the link there, and I also have it on Instagram as well.
How has your production affected your DJing, and how has your DJing turned around and affected your production?
Well, and you can only go so far within music nowadays, and you're not really going to get gigs really without producing, and that was at that time. Now it's different, especially post pandemic. A lot of people are on Twitch and they're getting bookings, or just putting out mixes and stuff like that. So it's really hard to tell, but to be taking a little bit more seriously as an artist, you definitely need that production merit. And I wanted to produce.
So how did one affect the other?
I don't really think they did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really don't.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. It's the direction I was going, so I guess we're done with that. Huh?
I mean, I guess I listen to music a little bit more, I would say.
Yeah.
For me, maybe I'm a little bit more picky about what I want to put out there, and I just understand, have been evaluating the compositions a little bit more. But,
right. There hasn't been like a structural change, like a change in the approach to your programming, or what you put in what order, or what you try to do with the dance floor?
No, I guess that comes more so with how long you've been DJing and the kind of direction you want to go in. Sure. And I guess you can probably take bits and pieces more from, how you're DJing and what you notice is affecting people to dance more, or people are enjoying more as a result. So
some people, it changes them, and they start looking at things differently. Like, oh, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do that. And some people, like you said, it doesn't change them at all.
It kind of does, I guess. But I guess from me, from a standpoint, that just comes with experience as you go along, and different sounds that you want to put into your production. I listen more to music. Right. More so, I try not to just get inspiration from how I'm DJing. I listen to a lot of other forms of music. So I listen to more jazz. I listen to more house. I listen to more down tempo, more dub, and just try to understand how those frequencies are applied within production, or how this bass line influences the sample, and so on and so forth. So I think it's more of a production versus production standpoint. DJing, I guess, probably listening to other DJs, other notable DJs, and how they mix, and getting inspiration from them. Who
are you looking up to?
I listen to a lot of non-drum and bass mixes, to be honest with you. I really like Groove Armada a lot, and
they are fun.
Yeah, there's several others I can't think of right now, but
they seem to have that ability with their production to kind of step outside the normal box without being unrelatable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I really love them for that. I wanted to swing back to the kind of granular difference between parties in the mid-90s. What were the people like? What were the shows like? What were people's motivations like? How are they different? We were talking earlier that DJing is not a meritocracy anymore, like in the way that it used to be a meritocracy. That's what I'm trying to draw out of you. Was any of that apparent at the time?
I started DJing in 2004, but I was really, really a raver, between the years of 98 to about 2002. Okay. So my focus more was like dancing and going out and having fun. One thing I did notice is that a lot of the DJs that were local and popular back then are superstars now. Right. So there seems to be a progression of about 20 years to 25 years to 30 years of DJs working before they finally strike the notoriety, whether through production or some sort of like major crossover set that gets them noticed. One person, for example, D-Nice, or even having a record label, So I guess there's that. I did notice back in the day, a lot of DJs that progressed on further, a lot of them produced, and not necessarily, a lot of them, the ones that produced were able to progress further than the ones that didn't.
And production back then was my God, it was like lots and lots of rack equipment and loops and having to deal with a avalanche of function over form. You know, Ableton is now spun that on its head to where its form looks beautiful, it's nice, it's catered for you to figure out how to use it. All this stuff back then, forget all about it. If you think about, I know I don't want to call it a one-hit wonder, but it's like I call it a one summer wonder, like Delirium Silence. That was made on that old type of gear. The fact that they could get away with a lot of that stuff then on that, and you look at the DAW now trying to do it, and you're still scratching your head going, how'd they do this? And these guys really, you couldn't see any of it. You had to memorize the entire damn thing. That's something that really makes me want to spin my propeller. We talked about what you've been doing. We talked about where you came from. Is there any philosophy about how you interact with your scene, your people? Because at this point you have enough fans where you have a body of people that you take care of in a certain way, because you're very communicative with them.
Yeah, I guess my thing mostly right now is just being authentic and motivating others. I feel that connection definitely has helped a lot of people understand my purpose as an artist and someone who enjoys making music and playing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically it.
So I'd like to bring you back over to something that I've noticed in your interview, is that you brought up a couple of times the idea of you're in a paradigm, you're in a structure that's like made for people who aren't you. It's made for boys, it's made for white people, it's made for taller people, anything. It's in the way that I can feel an undertone of you're living in a structure that doesn't necessarily make room for you. What's that like?
Drum and bass, when it started in the UK, it did come from a lot of people who were of Caribbean ancestry or of African ancestry, and of course it morphed into something that became everyone's music, but they still gave credit to the roots. And when I started getting into drum and bass, one of the things that brought me in was definitely its Caribbean aspect. I related to it. I'm first generation Caribbean. A lot of my relatives that live in the UK, when they found out that I love this music, they're like, that's a British thing, they're really surprised, but it resonated with me, and as time went on, when I linked with a lot of people in the UK, my interests and their interests were very similar. So there's that aspect. However, in the United States, there aren't many people of color involved in this music. There's that aspect of dance music not being, well, there was. It's a little different now. But when I got into it, there's that aspect of dance music not really relating to a lot of people of color. They didn't see it as something that was urban or something that represented them. Okay. Even though in the UK...
And this is when?
This is the late 90s.
Late
90s,
okay.
definitely.
Right,
early 2000s.
House started in the warehouse.
Exactly.
Gay black guys.
Exactly.
So
but still,
that's interesting.
Going to school in New York and Hartford, even though you did have kids that went to Limelight, your normal kid that grew up in East Flatbush or Brownsville or what have you would not go to those nights because they didn't feel comfortable. They didn't feel like it was for them. And there was definitely a shift of culture at that point in time. However, the late 90s, you had clubs like the Tunnel that had a hip-hop room, so we would all party together. But as far as their further involvement in deep in rave culture, unless it was like New York City, because you had that aspect also. You had a lot of hip-hop heads that went to Concrete Jungle or went out to house nights, but typically compared to the rest of the country, it's a small margin. It really, really is. So if you look at drum and bass at that time, there weren't many people of color, and there definitely weren't many women of color that were really into it. There were only a handful, and we all became friends. So when it came to someone taking you seriously, if they didn't know who you were, they didn't think that you liked the music or you understood it, which is really, really strange. And, I went through a lot of many different things, especially
a lot of promoters are assuming you're getting booked because you're a pretty face.
Yeah, pretty face, or you have hyper aggressive males that are very insultive to you, that will insult your skills or your knowledge, and don't take you seriously. And that's United States. When it came from the UK aspect, it wasn't like that really from a lot of people. But as time went on, I started to make a name for myself. You would have a lot of people that still would behave that way, but you would have a lot of people that would give you a chance because they thought you were good. And they just wanted to see a change in the scene. A lot of them were men. I do have to say a lot of men were just tired of the way things were going and, wanted to book me because they loved what I did. One person was Jeff Cohen, who passed away this year. He ran Stuck on Earth, and he gave me some of my first major bookings in New York City. Baby Boo was one of them, and I attended all the Boo events when I was a kid, so it was a treat to play that at Studio B in 2008, or was it 2010? Somewhere around there.
Sure.
Yeah. So one of the things that happens as a result of, the disparity with women in electronic music.
What did you do about it?
Yeah, I can't believe I failed to mention this. Around 2009, I started linking with a group of women in Canada.
Yeah.
One of them was Beach Rates and SWAT. SWAT had a collective called D&B Girls, and it was one of the first collectives of that time. Earlier on, one of my first gigs was through a female collective called Sister, and that was ran by a group of women in New York and San Francisco, and they booked me to play a night in New York around 2005, 2006. But, like I said, around 2008, I was really pushing myself out there, and I didn't know a lot of people were watching what I was doing. So I linked with SWAT, and, I started doing a few Ustream streams. This is when the whole live stream thing started to become an actual thing. People are using Ustream to do live broadcasts of DJing, and I started doing a couple of them around then in 2010. And then around 2012, she hit me up with the idea of me becoming U.S. manager for a U.S. chapter of D&B Girls because she wanted to expand the group. And 2013, I was brought on officially. I then brought on Iris and TGR Bass and Lovelace. Those are my first three. Then following that was Miss Hayes and Corrine, Athena in Texas, Neversoft in Baltimore, and Firefly in Chicago. And the whole point of D&B Girls was strength in numbers. A lot of women, as drum and bass has gotten popular and a lot of people have hosted nights, sometimes the boys club can get very mean and very obnoxious. And it can make it very hard for women to come forward and play. More than, just your standard ladies nights. Like, how come I'm not good enough to play with the boys on a regular night or good enough to get paid? There are all kinds of disparities. Right. So linking with them was one of the best things that I did. At first, we definitely did a lot of ladies nights, but it definitely set a reputation of, okay, these aren't women to play with.
Right.
These are women that are actually very serious about what they do and inspiring other women. Now you have tons of women-based collectives or femme-based collectives, queer collectives, all kinds of stuff. There's been a shift in thinking in drum and bass. It's not just a boys club anymore. And I've worked with a lot of different ones, such as Just Be out in Bristol and Manchester, Siren Project, which is actually international at this point, and many others. So it's been great, to be part of that system of change that basically led to equity within dance music.
And that's what you're experiencing now.
Yes, yeah.
So tell me about your name, Mizeyesis. How did we get here?
I grew up loving Egyptology. I have tattoos that are hieroglyphics on my body. I love the whole aspect of it, culturally and what it meant. And I've been, a fan of the triad, which is basically the story of Isis, Osiris, and Horus. And Isis was the mother goddess. And the mother goddess appears in pretty much every culture. You have Freya, you have Christian's wife, if you look at every single culture, there's a mother goddess. But I liked Isis. I liked the wings. I liked, she was part bull. She was, the goddess of magic, the god of fertility, the goddess of love. She was everything. And I felt that my message was to relate from a feminine aspect, emotionally, this very aggressive, masculine music. How can I do so from a feminine approach?
Yeah.
And that's why I felt, the need to be Isis. First it was going to be Isis, my DJ name. Right. And then my buddy from Connecticut, Snafu, said, you should put Miz in front of it. There's 5 million DJs named Isis. And I looked up, there were a lot of DJs named Isis at that point in time.
Yeah.
So he's like, you should put Miz. And the reason being, you're from New York, you love graffiti, you're a B-girl, and you have that flavor. And it made sense. And I changed the spelling of Isis to also reflect, third eye and the fact that I'm a cis. So if you look at the compound name, it does say Mizeye for third eye, and then cis, I'm a woman of color, I'm a black woman, so that's where the cis came about. And there was that period of time where things did get really weird, I guess, when ISIS first came around. So the terrorist group, and a couple of people I know that they ended up changing their DJ names, but there were a lot of talks on, where did this name come from? What was the meaning? And I would post, who Isis was as the deity and where the name come from. It's actually a Greek name. The original name for Isis was Aset, but I believe the Greek adaptation became more popular, and people still say it. They know, it's not anything negative or anything like that. And having to re-educate individuals on what the deity mean and why I chose it, I don't mind. It actually has relaxed a lot of people from being scared of me using it, and I've even had people in military at that time say, I will fight for you to use that name. I said, cool, all right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. So today, you're playing a set in the Big Dark Room. You're going to take us on a house journey. That's different for you.
No, not really. I started DJing house around 2005, 2006. I was getting a little bored with some of the releases that I was finding. I didn't really like a lot of the drum and bass. I found that I was digging more into the breakbeat side of drum and bass, atmospheric, or there was a new style emerging called drum funk around that time, like early 2000s. And there were only but so much releases at that point in time. So I started experimenting. I said, let me experiment with playing house a little bit.
Yeah.
And I didn't really start getting deeper into that probably around 2008. 2008, I started playing dubstep also. And I found that the dubstep helped me understand how to DJ house more. And then eventually techno as well. The techno, mixing other genres, eventually helped with my drum and bass mixing, at least understanding, what to bring in at certain times. So I started getting known for playing house as well. I would say probably around 2014. When Afterlife came to Connecticut, around 2012, I was playing house at Afterlife a lot. And I was also playing at Rise a lot, and playing house at Rise. So some people know me for playing house. Everyone knows I DJ and produce drum and bass, but some people know me also for playing house. Not everyone does.
I didn't know you played so much house. I thought it was just... I caught you, I forget what venue playing house, and then I think a couple weeks or months later you came over to Strictly, and I was playing drum and bass. Mm-hmm. So, what do you have going on now? I
have playing in March at Electric Haze for Fibonacci's art gallery opening.
Oh, right on.
And then after that,
When is that, by the way?
That is March 4th.
March 4th. Okay.
Yes.
And right, that's in Worcester, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I do have some things in the works, but what I'm kind of focusing on right now is in late June through early July, I'm actually going to be playing out in London quite a bit. I got booked for a night called Renegade Hardware, which is, it's a historic drum and bass night label. I got booked for that, and I'll be playing something else the following week, I believe, Outlook UK, and then another event the week after that. So I'm sort of focusing on that, and I do have some gigs through Cybergroove. My UK individuals are a booking agency called BPM Artists, and both are kind of keeping me very busy right now.
That's good.
Yeah.
What are the size of the floors you're hitting out in the UK?
I have no idea.
Oh, you don't know?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they're big nights, but I wouldn't be able to answer the size of the floor. They're big nights.
Right.
Yep.
It has been an unmatched pleasure to have you on the show today. Can you help us out with your contact information, websites, Facebook? What do you got? Sure.
On Facebook, you can find me on Mizeyesis DJ Official. That will bring you to my Facebook page, and that's the easiest way of connecting with me. The other profile is full. The one where you like, that's definitely the easiest on Facebook. Instagram, my handle is ITSMIZEYESIS. Twitter, Mizeyesis, SoundCloud, /Mizeyesis, MIZEYESIS. And yeah, my website also is mizeyesis.com, but yeah, the easiest way is through social media. At this point in time.
Mizeyesis.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but the easiest way is through social media at this point.
Right on. Okay. Do you take booking requests through Mizeyesis, or would you prefer people to go after your booking agents?
My booking agent. So in the United States, you would hit up Cybergroove, CG Agency, or Cybergroove AM. And for UK, it would be BPM Artists. And you can find both through Google. They're both really excellent booking agencies.
Okay, well, that about wraps things up for the first season of Magic Land's Big Dark Room here. Daniel and I want to thank you so much for tuning in this whole time. We really appreciate it. We also want to thank the amazing DJs who've come on through for the show, and also want to give a huge shout out and thanks to the amazing crew. We wouldn't have been able to do this show without you. Thank you so much. With that being said, Daniel and I are going to be closing down shop here for a few. We are going to be moving into a new studio space. So in the meantime, we're going to be putting together some remote content that's going to be more focused on various topics of the music industry. So be on the lookout for that in the future. And talking about the future, head on over to magiclandentertainment.com and sign up to our mailing list. Members there will get exclusive content, new music releases, DJ sets, artwork, performances, and more. All right, till the next season, we will see you in the Big Dark Room. Peace.